Good morning, everyone. This is Lisa Crockwell, and welcome to our NLASW information session on the Continuing Professional Education Policy and Registration Renewal. I'm joined here this morning by Lori Hewitt, who's the chair of the Registration Committee, and Lori and I have been facilitating these sessions for quite a while. Also joined by Annette Johns, and Annette's our Associate Director of Policy and Practice, and Annette's going to be moderating the questions as we go through this morning, and by Adrian Foley, our Coordinator of Communications and Administration. And Adrian works with us on both the Continuing Professional Education and the Registration Renewal for sure. So since 2011, we've been offering our provincial information sessions. So this is our 14th session about the submission of CPE credits. And this year, we've always offered it provincially, but this year, thanks to our partnership with the Canadian Association of Social Workers, we're offering the session by webinar. So we appreciate that you've taken the time to join us, and we'll actually be repeating this session on January the 19th for those who've been unable to attend. Plus, this session, now that we have the webinar technology, will be available on the NLASW YouTube channel, so you can view it at any time. So in terms of the different format that we're using this year, the course of the session continues, however it's offered, it continues to be one CPE credit because we're going to go for about an hour under the required category workshop. And as we get into the credits, you'll see where that fits. This time, we usually have, when we've been on the audio conference before, we've had some chatting back and forth, but using this format, we're just going to ask you to type your questions or comments at any time throughout the presentation, and we'll just be pausing at intervals, and we'll have some dedicated time towards the end to address any questions or comments that you might have, so we'll certainly do that as well. And when you logged onto the webinar this morning, all of the housekeeping details, like where to access this recording, how to download the slides, there was a little widget on the right-hand side of your screen. So all of the information is there. Okay. So we're going to focus on two areas during our information session this morning. We're going to go through the overview of the CPE policy and just talk about reviewing and how CPE submissions our credits are submitted. On the left-hand side is the cover page of the CPE policy. That can be found on the NLASW website, nlasw.ca. We're going to be referring a fair bit to the website as we go through some of the slides this morning because we have a lot of information there for people, and hopefully you'll find it useful. So we're going to take you through some of that as well and kind of pull out and highlight some of the things that we think are most interesting or pertinent in terms of registration renewal and CPE credits. We're also, we've got the login page there on the right-hand side of the screen to our online registration and renewal system. As those of you who are renewing know, we launched that in 2017. And we're going to provide an update on some new features to that system this year based on just comments and continuous improvement, all designed to hopefully make registration renewal easier for sure. We'd like to start off this, discussion in terms of, and this presentation, in terms of just putting the CPE policy into context of the bigger picture, and just talk about for people particularly who are new to this process and new to registration renewal. So we have a number of our newer social workers online. We just like to talk about why do we have this policy in the first place. And actually, NLASW as an organization has had continuing professional education and the submission of credits. We developed this since the mid-1990s. So for over 20 years, we've had this, requirement as part of registration renewal. And it's really consistent with all regulated professions, and it just reflects our commitment to lifelong learning, to remaining current, and really offering the highest quality of professional service. And it's part of our ethical responsibility. And we just highlighted on this slide, you can see the relevant section of the CASW Code of Ethics, which is really the foundation of where this policy comes from. And it's the responsibility of our registration committee, of which Lori is chair, and we have a great committee, that every year is looking at this policy, making sure it's clear and reflects practice. And every year we'll come up with some little tweaks on it. And if you'll notice, the copy of the CPE policy, which is online now, was just further refined in March of 2017. So we are always looking at it, and we try to give you any updates as we do this information session each year. Coming in 2018, we do expect some additions to our legislation, and it will make this policy kind of link with the Social Workers Act and the legislation. Since we've been doing this for over 20 years, it will not mean anything new in terms of requirements for CPE for social workers. So you won't see any change to it. It'll just be that the policy will be linked in terms of the legislation, and that again is consistent with the other regulated professions in the province. The other thing we kind of like to sort of set some foundation and context with as we kind of begin our discussion is that, we say all the time, is that our social work profession is a wonderful and diverse profession, and it is broad, and we have many different position descriptions underneath our profession, and that the RSW that we have is more than the job that somebody holds. And we really keep that in mind as we're looking at the CPE policy. And we really tried to keep it broad and keep it diverse to reflect the diversity of practice. So part of it is categorizing, where kind of education credits fit. But the other part of it is really being able to reflect on the type of education that people are receiving, and then make sure that the policy is kind of able to accommodate that. And sometimes people will often ask, is this just about direct practice social work credits? And you can see as we kind of go through it that it's not. That really if the education that you're receiving is reflecting your type of practice, be it direct practice or policy practice or management practice or research, then we do think about that and encompass that into CPE credits. And we'll be kind of going through some examples of that this morning. That's also one of the main reasons why we don't necessarily accredit most CPE. So the ability to choose the type of CPE that makes most sense to where people are in their stage of career and their area of practice. So we don't have a list. We do, however, post lots of things that qualify for CPE on our website, and we actually, try to. We also have accredited some things. We have any social workers who are online who work with child, youth, and family services, for example, because so many social workers were involved with taking the education through the core modules, then we've certainly looked at those, accredited them, and all that information is on our website as well in terms of the numbers of hours for each module. So in keeping with that kind of train of thought, we, in 2015, developed the CPE self-reflection tool, and it really is a self-assessment. It's intended to help all of us in practice to reflect on our practice, to choose the education which meets our learning needs and our learning styles. And it goes through a process of self-evaluation which is divided into 5 areas that you'll see outlined there on the screen. And so as you look at the tool, which is also available on our website, and this is just meant to sort of help to think about practice. It's not something which is submitted as part of CPE, but it does go through things like, what are my current competencies? Where am I in my education journey and my years of experience? Because what might be relevant to me in terms of really meaningful education in my first year might be totally different than in my 10th or 15th year. What are the areas of practice where I've had experience, and what have I completed to date? It looks at things like career goals. Where do I want to go? What do I know? What would I like to know? And what are the things I should be thinking about in terms of future CE if I'm considering transferring to another field of social work practice, or I'm interested in a specific, technique therapy or skill? Or are there areas where, well, I know my knowledge is probably not where it ought to be and I should really think about upgrading in that area? Or my skills need to be refreshed, or a population I would like to work with. It looks at the kind of learning environments and activities. So do I benefit most from intensive training? Do I do well with shorter sessions? So you can get a mix of CPE in different ways. And people, different styles meet people's different needs, where we are in different times in our lives. We can, and also just in terms of real practical part of access. And then finally, it looks at professional knowledge, because regardless of where we might be employed or kind of our years of practice, there's always some foundational stuff that all of us need to have in terms of ethics and ethical decision making and, documentation generally, principles of informed consent and standards of practice and boundaries and theory. So looking at, where do I want to be kind of looking at with regards to all of that. And finally, then it just has a section for identifying CE goals. So that's the idea and the thought behind that. It's also kind of fits with some of our other practice resources, and I'll just stepping away from CPE, we have a lot of practice resources on our website and 2 new kind of self-reflection tools that are not particularly related to this policy, but just related to practice that are recently on our website over the last little while is documentation and informed consent. So you can take the opportunity to check that out as you're looking at the CPE self-reflection tool. So we're going to, on the next slide, we're going to spend just a little bit of time just looking at the practical parts of the policy, particularly for people who are new to it. And I'm going to pass it over to Lori to go through the next couple of slides.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Lisa. After that reflection occurs and CE has been completed for the year, how does it practically get submitted, and what are the requirements of the policy? So for those of you that are new to the policy, we're going to do a quick recap of the fundamentals, and then we're going to just break it down according to category, look a little more specifically at some examples in terms of how you would document those. So there are 40 CPE credits that must be submitted annually, and these are broken down under 2 categories, the required and the elective. And at least 20 of the credits must be from the required category. And in terms of documenting the credits, 1 credit is equivalent to 1 hour of learning. And as we move down through the examples, you'll get a better understanding of how that's captured. So as mentioned earlier, there are 2 primary categories where you would document your credits. So one would be required, and then the other would be elective. So required credits are related to the practice of social work, and these are oftentimes obtained through structured learning activities and are transferable skills and transferable learning, and are often transferable across a range of practice settings. So whether it is direct practice, whether it's practice within the area of policy or administration, research, community development, these credits are typically able to be transferred, like I said, across a wide variety of settings. Whereas the elective category, these credits are more informal. They're a little more flexible. Oftentimes they're specific to one's position. Now, there may be times where something may be offered by an employer and it can be transferable across social work fields of practice. And we're going to get into some examples so you'll have a better understanding of how these types of credits can be captured. So the first category would be required. And under the required credits, there are 5 categories. And you'll notice that each one, we're going to go down through and offer just a couple of examples under each category. The first one would be courses. And courses are really academic that enhance or relate to social work practice and have to be at least 36 hours completed, and it has to be completed at an accredited university. And activities that are classified as a course but not completed at an accredited university, you can claim these credits, but what you would do is capture them under the workshop category. So it would need to be under an accredited university. So some examples of this would be courses that you may do that work towards an MSW or a PhD, It could also include courses in related professions such as business management, family therapy, women's studies, policy online courses. Auditing a course would also be an example that could be included under this category, and MSW field placement could also be included. The second category would be conferences, and conferences are typically events that run from either 1 day up to 5 days, where oftentimes there's a common theme and is explored normally through different presenters discussing a variety of topics that are relevant to social work practice. So some recent examples of some conferences would be the Newfoundland Palliative Care Association Annual Conference, the Canadian Group Psychotherapy Association Conference. So typically this would be captured under this category. And again, typically it would have a common theme. The third category, field instruction. Credits for field instruction can be claimed under this category if you are the primary field instructor for a student enrolled in a social work program, which is accredited by the CASW or internationally equivalent. As a field instructor, you would have the primary responsibility for the education as well as the evaluation and the recommendations for the grades of the students. If you are sharing the responsibility of a field instructor role, including the evaluation, then you could claim half of those CPE credits. So what that would mean is that as opposed to being able to claim 40 for the first time you're engaged in this activity, you would claim 20. If you do field instruction on a regular basis, so every subsequent year, you could claim 20 if you are the primary field instructor. And again, if you share that responsibility, then you could claim half of the 20, which would be 10. Workshops, and workshops is typically an educational event. It normally revolves around one topic with a very specific set of learning objectives. Most of us get the majority of our required credits through this workshop or through this category. And some examples of workshops that have been offered as of late. So, of course, any of the NLASW education events. So just some examples would be this CPE policy information, for example, would be included as one credit under this category. Emotionally focused couples therapy, trauma-informed care, any of the sessions that are offered through the NLASW. As well, there are a number of education events that are offered through the CASW. So, for example, Ethics and Social Work webinar series, the Youth and Marijuana series, liability insurance, providing e-services to clients. So anything offered, the webinar series that are offered through CASW could be counted under this category. There are a number of websites and areas that are offered through the Crises and Trauma Resource Institute. So you could go online and do these learnings. And some examples would be de-escalating potentially violent situations, trauma strategies for resolving the impact of post-traumatic stress. If you go on their website, there's a number of webinars that are there and available, and that will be captured under the workshop. And as well as the Achieve Training Center, similarly, they have a number of webinars that are available as well. So mental health in the workplace, there's a leadership webinar that's available. Again, if you go online and look at these, they're easily accessible and could be counted under the workshop category. And oftentimes, Eastern Health offers sessions as well that could be included. So the Social Work Practice Symposium, Mental Health First Aid, these could be captured as well under the workshop. So these are some examples. And again, if you want more specifics, you certainly could look on the CPE policy, and they're all outlined there as well. So the final category under the required credit section would be the professional education delivery. And you'll note that you can document a maximum of 10 credits annually. And this is for the preparation and delivery of conferences or workshops that are really intended to promote the professional development of social workers and professionals. If you continue or offer similar presentations with the same material on a regular basis, you can still count CPE credits, but unless it is, the material has to be substantially modified in order to claim this. So to keep that in mind as well. some examples of credits that could be captured under professional education delivery: writing an article for Connecting Voices, writing an article for submission to a journal, if you are acting as a guest lecturer or a sessional instructor, if you're presenting to social work students, or providing PRIDE training to colleagues or professionals. These could be captured under the professional education delivery section. So moving into the second category, the elective credits, again, you'll notice there are 5 specific categories under this heading. The first one being self-directed learning, fairly self-explanatory. So this would involve either as an individual or a group activity. You could be involved in reading academic journals related to social work practice, and this could also include course preparation. So it could also involve viewing DVDs on techniques such as motivational interviewing, play therapy, CASW media monitoring articles. Anything that would involve the self-directed learning could be counted under this heading. Mentoring, and this would be the time spent mentoring social work and other students. And this differs from field instruction in that the mentor isn't the primary evaluator of the student. However, non-social work students, you could be the primary evaluator, and you would include this under the mentoring category, not the field instruction category. In-service training. This category is really specific to your position, and it isn't necessarily skills that are transferable across the social work profession. However, recognizes that there are things that are required that will help you be effective in carrying out what's required for your specific position. So the knowledge gained from any in-service training offerings is really more specific to your direct or immediate job rather than transferable to the social work profession in general. So just some examples that could be captured under the in-service training. If you're doing sessions on monthly stats, workload measurements, CRMS training, if you're involved in attendance management sessions, first aid, CPR that's required for the agency, these certainly could be captured under the in-service training category. Committee work. Committee work really is representative of the fact that you sometimes can be taking on and stretching your learning as a part of committee work that's not directly related to your everyday practice or what's required of you in your duties. So, and it should really involve furthering the social work profession, or you're representing the social work profession. So some examples of committee work that can be captured under this category, any of the NLASW committees that you may be involved in, NLASW external representatives, NLASW communication facilitators would all be captured under this category. Ethics committees, conference planning committees, professional practice committees, accreditation committees. These can be documented under this category. And then finally, the public education delivery. The preparation and delivery of public education events related to the problems or issues dealt with by the social work profession would be included under this category. And it's similar to the prior category that CPE hours cannot be earned for subsequent presentations of the same material unless, again, the content is modified substantially. So time spent preparing an article for publication through mass media could be included in this category. Public lectures, career day presentations, providing PRIDE training to the public can be captured under this heading. So we've gone through 2 of the categories or credit levels, and then categories with examples under each. Not only do we get calls or questions about what can be included or what would fit under each category, we've also gotten some questions about certain activities that have not been able to be included or are not considered CPE. So I'm just going to give a couple of examples of those for clarification because questions have come in over the years about these in particular. So sometimes people ask about staff and team meetings, whether they can include that under CPE. And unless there is an education component included, then they wouldn't be captured under either of the categories. Again, we just mentioned committee work. committee work that's a part of your employment and that's related to your day-to-day activities, so example, management meetings, meetings related to program changes, certainly wouldn't be applicable. Planning social events, exercise activities, exercise classes, hours spent volunteering with community groups. We get asked about this. So, for example, school councils, Girl Guide organizations, or job shadowing, for example. If you're assisting a new colleague, it needs to fit the criteria for when we went through the specifics for the mentoring or the field instruction. But if you're doing job shadowing and just assisting, then that wouldn't be captured in either of these categories. So just moving to the next slide, you'll see we've broken it down a little further just to give you some examples, some further examples under the required credits and under the elective credits. So on the left-hand side, you will see some of the examples, and these are events in the last year that were offered. So we wanted to really demonstrate to give you an understanding how they were categorized and the difference between required and electives. So the NLASW Aboriginal Community Social Work webinar, that would be considered a required credit, as well as the training session on the Personal Health Information Act and the Mental Health First Aid. These three under the required, these would be captured under the workshop category. And then the PRIDE training that's offered to professionals, again, required credit under the educational professional, or the professional education delivery, rather. On the right-hand side, again, some examples of the elective credits and reading NLASW cultural competency standards, for example. This could be counted. You'd put this under the self-directed learning. The training session workload measurement, the CPR and first aid, these can be included under the in-service training. This is something that's offered by your employer. And then for the public education delivery, the PRIDE training to the public. So again, you could count this under the electives, and they're broken down per category. So these are just some examples of what has been offered. And again, if you're going through and you're uncertain about certain credits or certain activities that you're involved in, you can always go through the CPE policy. Everything is laid out there very clearly, and there are numerous examples that are outlined to assist when you're documenting and capturing your credits.
Thanks, Lori. I'm going to go to the next slide, which is, we talked a little bit earlier today about resources, and Lori gave a great overview of all the different kinds of examples that can fall into the various categories of CPE. But 1 year ago, we had launched a new website, and on that website, there's a continuing education menu, and it has a lot of information that we just wanted to kind of capture and kind of review again. So you'll find the links to the full CPE policy, which includes a section on frequently asked questions. There's the self-assessment tool that I had referred to earlier. There's examples of past CPE events, some of which Lori went through, and they've been updated for events that happened in 2017. There's also sources of CPE. So Lori had referred to the CTRI and Achieve. There's links on our website to those websites. Also, NLASW is part of a North American organization called the Association of Social Work Boards, and they have what they an education, a CE program, which is completely online, and there's a wide range of workshops and different events that you can attend online, which are all qualify for the NLASW CPE policy. So we've linked kind of, if it's offered through them, it's also qualified for ours as well. And then what we've done, too, over the past year with the launching of the new website is we have our YouTube channel, which is the recordings of past webinars and webcasts, including this one. So we archive a lot of events. If you go back and review those events, it would be the same as watching them live, so they would also be workshops for required credits. Also, what you'll see, Lori talked about in terms of her example, she looked at, if you review the cultural competence standards. On our website as well, there's a section on practice resources, and there's just an ever kind of growing list of practice resources there for people that can not only be used as tools, but certainly in terms of review are definitely self-reflected learning. So we post any events that we receive that meet the CPE policy. We will post them under events also on this section of our webpage. So you'll see anything that's kind of coming up when you go into that link over the next little while. One example now is the Ontario Association of Social Workers are offering a course, an online course in working with seniors and various aspects of working with seniors. So you'll soon find the links and all that in there as well. And at the end of each month, the NLASW updates. We try to kind of put everything social workers need to know for that month, and we send it to you at the end of the month electronically by email. And that always contains links to what's coming up with returns of CPE. So just to give you some sense, in 2017 alone, like we're almost at the end of this year, so NLASW on our own and in partnership with the Canadian Association of Social Workers now through this new WebLearn license, we've provided 52 hours of continuing education within the required category. So that exceeds the policy, and certainly we're really committed to access and continuing to try to have that there, and much of that is archived as well. So it just kind of gives you a sense in terms of that access piece as well as trying to go through some of the credits. So we're going to take a minute now because we're going to turn to just some information about online renewal. And I want to check in with Annette to see what questions, if any, we've received so far, and we can kind of take a look at those. Okay, so I'm looking at Annette's question. So we don't have any received so far, but if we get some and you want to put some in throughout the rest of the presentation, we're going to have some time at the end as well. So no worries, we'll kind of take a look at them then as well. All right. Okay, so now we're just going to switch a little to our online registration renewal system since it's still fairly new. This is our second year with this system. It worked very well last year, and your feedback, there were surveys gone out every time someone renewed, and certainly your feedback was really helpful. It was positive, and a couple of little changes we're going to make this year that we're going to tell you about. So if you're new to registration renewal, you access it on the web page, NLASW. On the top there, you'll see My NLASW. That's your portal for all members to access online renewal, as well as other features. So through that portal, you can update your personal information anytime throughout the year. You can retrieve tax receipts if you need them. And you can update your CPE. So as you do CPE throughout the year, instead of us writing it in our calendars, you can kind of go directly in and write it or put it right into the system. And if you're accessing this is also mobile device friendly, so you can access that portal through the right drop-down menu if you're looking at it on an iPhone or an iPad, for example. When you go into My NLASW, last year everyone was sent a password by mail to log into the system. Hopefully that password was computer generated and contained all kinds of numbers and symbols. Hopefully you've had a chance to change your password throughout the past year. If you haven't had a chance to do that and you still have access to your old one, we encourage you to do it before online renewal opens, just to have that up, and also because it's good to be able to access this portal throughout the year, and particularly for entering CPE. Which is, we're going to add a new feature around that this year, so that's particularly helpful. If you forgot your password, you can change it anytime by just going into this and clicking Forgot Your Password, and we're going to just show that to you because that's on the next slide. Here's the login screen when you go in. Again, put in your registration number, which if you're not sure, you can type your name and your registration number will appear, or you can go into our website under the member registry and see your registration number. If you have forgotten your password, or you can click on the Forgot Your Password part there underneath on that screen, and you will be asked to supply your email. And if the email that we have for you or the email you provide there matches the one in our database, we'll send you automatically an email password reset with a link to specify your own password and to change it. If it doesn't match, and there's been some change over the years, you'll be asked to supply your date of birth, because that's how we'll look and verify who you are, and then we will send you a password. So once you get in there, as I said earlier, there's a lot of options to be able to just kind of update your information throughout the year. When it comes renewal time, there will be, once you go in there, a button which says Renew for the registration year 2018, and you'll kind of go right into that. I'm not going to take you through all the steps. There are 9 steps to registration renewal. You can see the steps in the blue across the top of the screen there. But on the first page, since anyone who's going to be renewing is already registered, your personal information is going to be pre-populated there. So if you haven't made any changes to your address or primary email or all that kind of thing, that's going to be there. And if you need to make any changes, you can edit on that page. If you have had a name change, you can go in and upload just a piece of ID with your name change on it so that we can change that into the system. And this year, we're going to ask for a cell phone number. And the reason that we're doing that is that next year, we want to be able to add the option to text you your password if you forget it. So if we have access to your cell phone number in that information there, we'll be able to upgrade our system for year 3 and be able to have another method by which you can get your password. So once you go in there, there's the personal information. You save that. You go to the next page under membership. You're going to select whether you're active or non-practicing. The next one, I'm going to actually spend some time because it's on CPE, which is going to be the next slide, but I'll just mention it briefly here. The CPE section where there's submission of that. You go through that one. The next one is on education, your work history, your employment, and there's a declaration similar to those who were familiar with the paper form. You know, we declare that we're going to adhere to the Code of Ethics. There's a criminal record declaration there. So those kinds of pieces of just go through and read those questions and answer yes or no. Read them quickly, or read them. Take some time with them, because if you answer too quickly and you say no, you're not going to adhere to the Code of Ethics, you get kind of pushed through a new follow-up, and we need to follow up with you. So just take a look at that. And there's an opportunity to review everything that you've submitted again on the review page, and you can edit it. And this year we will add the option. Some people last year have asked us, can I print the review page for your records? So this year you'll be able to print. You'll have the option to print that review page when we get to that step. You can pay online by Visa or MasterCard. That's the final payment module. But if you have payroll deduction through your employer and you've been paying through payroll deduction over the last year, it'll already be pre-selected. You'll see that you've already paid, so you just need to do the rest of it. Once you've gone through those steps, you'll receive an email stating that you've completed registration renewal. And we'll take a final look at that, and then you'll receive a second email, which is the verification of your registration. It replaces the old membership cards. You'll receive your tax receipt for 2017, and your name will appear on the online registry as active or non-practicing until February 2019. I can't believe it. So those are the steps. It's been user-friendly, and hopefully it's very clear. But those pieces are in terms of the actual process of online renewal. I just want to take a minute because this is the screen of the CPE submissions. So just to kind of let you know how that works. This, if you're familiar with the old paper form, this is almost the same, basically, just electronically. So all you have to do is put in your totals of what you've completed in each of the categories that Lori has explained and outlined, both required and elective. And as you put in those final totals, the module will calculate how many you have, as well as how many you can carry over for 2018. And if you're carrying over any from the last year, that will be on that bottom of the screen for you as well. So that will kind of be included in your total. We each year randomly select 5% of our membership for audit, and this is the step 2. If you've been selected for audit, you'll see it there, and you'll need to provide more details with regards to the audit. Very similar to what we used to do in paper form before, but now it's just the date, what you actually did, and what category it falls under. Also this year, and this is, I guess, one of the biggest new upgrades to the system for registration renewal in 2018, if you have been using the Update My CPE portal over the last year, there will be a button on this page which will say Transfer My CPE Credits, and whatever you've collected on that Update My CPE page will transfer, the totals will transfer over to this page, so you don't have to enter them again, and then you will that will happen there. So that's a great new feature. I've been using it over the past year, and I find it really helpful. If you haven't been using it over the past year, you could still put in your totals there. If you've only half used it, you can transfer over what's there and add to it if you need to for this year, or you can start using it for registration renewal in 2018 or 2019. So check that one out for sure. And finally, just some reminders, and we're going to take a few minutes for questions after I just finish this again, but just some reminders from our administrative team is that our deadline for registration renewal is February 15th. So all online renewals should be completed by midnight Island time, 11:30 in Labrador on that date. We want you to avoid the late fee, so have it done lots of time in advance. Then February 28th is the legislative deadline. That's when your license to practice actually expires. The registration renewal system will open in mid-January, so anytime after that, you can kind of go in and renew the registration. We are going to, you won't receive anything in print this year to remind you for registration. It's all going to come by email reminders that the system is open. So it'll come as individual emails and as kind of mass emails in our update and just general. So keep an eye out for that. Also, contact information has always been important, but the valid and primary email that you want us to communicate with you by now is super important. So it's how you'll receive everything from us. So just kind of take a minute and make sure that is up to date. So I am going to stop there again now and see if there's any questions that have come in. Okay, and I'm going to pass it over to Annette.
Thank you, Lisa and Lori. What a great presentation. Lots of good information. So we do have several questions that have come in, and feel free to still send some of your questions along, and we'll try to get to them before the webinar is completed. The first question I have is, how many hours can you claim for committee hours?
All right, this is Lisa. So Lori and I will probably share these questions, but committee hours fall under elective credits. And so there is no cap on how many that you can claim under committee hours. Elective credits, you can claim as many as you want in all of those categories. But if you recall, and I think it kind of leads to a second important question, is on the carryover that I referred to when we got to the CPE page, you said how many of your credits are carried over. You can only carry over required credits. So anything in excess of 20 required credits that you submit in a year in those categories will carry over. Anything in excess of 20 that you submit under the elective category, which includes committee, they won't carry over. So for the purposes of registration renewal, submit anything you'd like to in terms of the elective, but as long as you have the 20, that's the main piece. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Annette now for questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa. Our next question is, are continuing professional education credits submitted based on calendar year or registration year?
All right, Lisa again. I guess the quick answer is generally they're submitted by registration year, But in January and February, the earlier you submit your CPE credits, or any of us submit our CPE credits, there may be things that you do at the end of January or into February that may not get submitted as part of that registration renewal. You can submit them the following year. And a really good example of this one is that in February, Annette facilitates the session between NLASW and ANNL, which is a webcast. It's usually around mid-February. Most of us have our registration renewed by then, but that particular or any workshops that you do at that particular time, if you have submitted your renewal before that event happens, just track it and submit it the following year.
Excellent, thank you. We have a question with regards to the portal for registration. So if registration opens in mid-January, can members save what we've entered and submit at a later date?
All right. I think you can. What I'm thinking is that opens up in mid-January. The information that you're going to put in there in terms of saving at a later date, you can do that any time throughout the year. So if it's personal information, for example, that you're putting in and saving at a later date, that will just appear as online renewal opens. The CPE credits, if you've got that into Update My CPE, that holds for you for the entire year and transfers over as well. So I'm hoping that that's answering that question, but the other sort of entries into our portal are saved, yes, and those are the ones then that link to when CPE opens up, that kind of automatically transfers to your renewal. So if you've changed your address or you've changed any other sort of piece of information. So I hope that answers your question.
This is Adrienne here. I'm just going to add on to what Lisa just mentioned. So it is possible as well when you are renewing, you can complete, like, say, an individual step, and when you press, like, the next button, that will save that information. So then if you log back in, you would then go to the next step in the process.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have another question that if a social worker is presenting on a topic, social work-related topic at a staff meeting, what would that social worker claim in terms of continuing education credits?
If you're presenting at a staff meeting and say you're doing a presentation on I don't know, something related to social work practice, then that would, for the period of time that you're presenting, that could be included as professional education delivery, and Lori outlined that under required credits. So you might have like a 2-hour staff meeting. You might present like a half hour or an hour on a topic. So that would be, yes, presenting to our colleagues or other social workers or other disciplines. Then that, yes, could be included under that category.
Perfect. Thank you. We have another question. This one's related to field instruction. So if you begin field instruction in January, what year can you claim that, or what registration year can you claim that as continuing professional education?
Good to claim that one in the year that it is completed. So if you are starting in 2018 to be a field instructor during the winter semester and you finish that in April of 2018, submit that for registration renewal in 2019. So if it's your first time being a field instructor and you're on your own, that's 40 credits. If you're a subsequent field instructor, that's 20 credits. If you're sharing it, it's half of that.
Thank you. We have another question related to involvement in professional practice councils, and would that count as committee work under the CPE policy?
The quick answer, yep, it is actually, and that is actually included in the list of examples. Lori referred to it earlier and went through some, so we have a complete list of different examples there that are that you can find on that. So if some of these kinds of questions, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I have another question. So if anyone else has any questions out there, please feel free to submit them now. Someone who's completed their Bachelor of Social Work, can they claim those courses as continuing professional education?
Okay. The Bachelor of Social Work degree is the foundation for entry to the profession. So we wouldn't claim BSW courses as continuing education because it's anything that we do after that foundational entry into the profession will be included as CE.
Okay, wonderful. Not seeing any more questions come in there at the moment. So thank you for those who've submitted questions, and we hope we answered all your questions throughout the presentation or through the Q&A period. I'm now going to hand things back to Lori and Lisa to wrap the session up.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for your really good questions. Like I said, there'll be we'll repeat this in January, and I'd just like to say thanks to Lori, my co-facilitator for session 14, and to Annette for moderating, and thanks to Adrian for responding, adding the additional information onto that question about the CPE portal. So happy holidays. Claim your 1 CPE credit under required workshop for this, and take care. Thanks.
Adam, you can go ahead and take us out of live stream now. Thank you, everyone.